Hi, Carter. We're going to start chapter 14 called Forest Flight from the Green Ember. Hope you're enjoying the book. I am. Okay. We need to get to shore, Uncle Wilfred said now. Smalls stabbed the water with one oar and the boat spun quickly to face the shore. Then he dug in with both oars and they shot forward. The boat raced ahead to the rocky shore of the Whitmer River a little ways upstream of Decker's Landing. Heather could see it was once a pretty little place with a long, wide deck and a cozy home on a high frame above the water. She thought of home and clenched her fists. Stay low, Uncle Wilfred said, though he didn't need to. They had all shrunk low, as if an owl was flying above. He was looking all around, and Heather did the same, searching for signs of movement anywhere. She saw them first. There, Heather whispered sharply, pointing to several wolves on a ridge above, behind the burning home. 7. Yes, Uncle Wilfred said, nodding. Well spotted, Heather. He motioned for quiet and pointed at some reeds near the shore. It's not Garlickson, is it? Heather whispered. No, Uncle Wilfred whispered back. It's his wolves under his command, but a different company. It would take Garlickson a while to get here. Decker? Smalls asked. No sign of struggle from them, Uncle Wilfred whispered, squinting to see through the haze of heat and swirling smoke. Maybe he got out in time. They reached the shore, and Smalls, shedding the oars with ease, deftly hopped from the boat to the water with barely a splash. Uncle Wilfred did the same, and the two of them pulled the boat to shore quickly. They dragged it in among some reeds and hid it as best they could. Heather saw that Pickett was looking this way and that, uncertain of what to do. Let's go, Pickett, she said, taking his arm. He shrugged off her help and hopped to the stony shore. I'm not a child, he said. Quiet, Smalls said, not looking back. Pickett bristled. Smalls crept forward and made hand gestures to Uncle Wilfred. He pointed ahead and to himself, then to the rest of them and to the ground. Heather assumed he meant, stay here while I go ahead. Uncle Wilfred huddled with Heather and Pickett while Smalls crept ahead. They watched Smalls dart quickly through an open patch. He dove, landing behind a small oak on a knoll near what was left of Decker's Landing. Smalls found cover and peered around. Here's a picture of the wolves. What's he doing? Pickett whispered. He's scouting their location, Uncle Wilfred said, seeing if we can slip past them unseen. He'll do anything for attention, Pickett muttered, then quickly winced. That's unjust and ungrateful, Uncle Wilfred whispered. If it weren't for Smalls, Heather would be dead. I'd be dead, and you would have had time of it yourself. Pickett looked down and muttered something indistinct. Heather ached, but she wasn't sure what she could do for Pickett. He was having a hard time, she knew, but they had bigger things to worry about. Okay, Uncle Wilfred said. He's tracking them now. Heather looked up to where Smalls was peeking out from behind the oak. His scarf flapped behind him and his sword dangled at his side. Smalls' hand, when it wasn't busy in another way, went instinctively to the top of the sword. Smalls signaled 7 with his hands, then gave a thumbs up. The number of enemies was confirmed. He pointed at Heather, Pickett, and Uncle Wilfred, then to a rock formation 100 yards inland to their right. It stood on the edge of the forest, as well concealed a place as any. Uncle Wilfred extended his own thumb in a signal back to Smalls. Smalls nodded and resumed his watch. The rocky ground over there at the forest edge, Uncle Wilfred said. Heather and Pickett both nodded. We're going to run for it soon. It's our best bet to get past these wolves. So running from them, is that it? Pickett said, shaking his head. Of course we are, Uncle Wilfred said, his frown returning. Heather looked back at Smalls. He extended a flat hand, which she took as a signal to wait. Then came one finger lifted and waved up and down, almost bouncing. Be ready, Uncle Wilfred said. We have to run full out. Do you understand? We cannot be seen. You have to run hard and head to the woods. Run for the woods. We go to where Small points to us. Or we go when Small points to us. As soon as the words were out of his mouth, Smalls pointed urgently at them, and they ran. Pickett saw Heather led them in the sprint. She would make it safely if any of them did. Behind her was Uncle Wilfred, who was slowed by looking back at Smalls to make sure he was on his way. Pickett was last. He also kept checking back to see where Smalls was and looking beyond to where the enemy wolves were. He wanted to prove he was not afraid, that Smalls wasn't the only one with courage. After a few seconds of watching, Smalls left his tree knoll and pounded the ground toward the cover of the thick trees. Pickett was amazed at how fast Smalls was. His scarf blew behind him as he raced toward them with incredible speed. He may be even faster than Heather. Add that to the list of his irritating perfections. Pickett stole one more glance at the wolves on the ridge. He saw the silhouette of a wolf half turned toward them. Heart racing, Pickett turned his head quickly toward the forest edge and tried to increase his speed. But it didn't work. He tripped awkwardly on a jutting rock. He somersaulted out of control and fell heavily in a long slide. He was in the open. His foot throbbed and he barely stifled a cry of pain. He shook his head to clear it and saw Uncle Wilfred ahead in the forest holding Heather back. He lay there, exposed in full view of the wolves. Anger rose in him once more, resented at this horrible situation and how useless he felt. The wolves would have him and probably Heather and the rest as well, and it would be all his fault. Then he felt a blow. Strong arms grabbed him roughly. He was being lifted and carried. He saw white fur and a blur of black cloth waving. Smalls was carrying him to safety. Bye-bye for now.